Okay, so we've all been there, right? A friend needs a little help, a little financial help, and we're happy to lend a hand. But sometimes things get a little sticky.
Yeah, definitely a little less friendly.
Right, exactly. So today we're going to use this podcast we found called How to Draft a Loan Agreement Between Friends.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to try to figure out how to protect ourselves and protect our relationships when we're lending money.
Yeah, it's that intersection of money and friendship that can get a little tricky.
Yes. And the big takeaway that I've learned is that you need a loan agreement.
Oh, really?
I know. I used to think it's a friend, we don't need to have a contract.
Right.
But a few situations have made me see things a little bit differently.
Yeah. I think what's fascinating is people often equate a loan agreement with a lack of trust, but it's actually the opposite.
Right.
You're creating clarity, you're creating accountability, and that prevents a lot of misunderstandings and resentment down the road.
Right. Because memories can be fuzzy.
They really can.
And then without a clear document outlining the terms, it's easy to get things mixed up in your head.
Absolutely.
Imagine this. You lend a friend $500.
Okay.
6 months later, you remember it differently. Maybe it was $600. Maybe they promised to pay you back sooner. And suddenly this loan that was supposed to be very simple is now a source of tension.
Exactly. And not to mention all the legal implications. If you don't have it in writing and things really go south,
Right.
you have no recourse. You have no proof of what the terms were.
You've convinced me loan agreement it is.
Yeah.
But what do we include? What should be included?
Well, you don't have to go full-on lawyer with it.
Okay, good.
But there are a few key elements that you want to make sure that you cover.
Okay, walk me through it.
All right. So the most basic and often overlooked is contact information.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking full legal names, addresses, phone numbers, both the lender and the borrower.
Got it.
You'd be surprised how many people skip over this step.
So no more writing it down on a napkin?
Definitely not. We want to get this right.
Okay. What's next?
All right. Next up, we have the loan amount and the purpose.
Okay.
Now, this is where we have to be specific.
So, what do you mean by purpose? I'm giving my friend money. Can they just spend it on whatever they want?
So that's where it gets a little tricky.
Okay.
Legally speaking, if you tie the loan to a specific purpose and they use the money for something else, it can create some complications down the line.
Oh, interesting.
So just be upfront about what the money's for.
Okay, so transparency again.
Absolutely.
Full transparency. What else?
All right, this is where it gets interesting repayment terms.
Okay.
So you want to clearly state if it's a lump sum repayment or installments.
Right.
And if it's installments, get specific.
Okay.
How often are they paying you back?
Monthly.
Monthly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Biweekly. What is the due date for each of those payments?
So no more of the pay me back when you can.
That is a recipe for disaster.
Got it. Okay.
And it really puts a strain on a friendship.
Okay, deadlines are important. I'm getting there.
Deadlines are very important.
What about interest rates? Is it tacky to charge a friend interest?
It's a great question, and there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
That's a personal decision. But one thing that the podcast reminded me of is to be mindful of state usury laws.
What is a usury law?
It's a limit on the amount of interest you can charge on a personal loan.
Oh, okay.
And exceeding that can have consequences.
Consequences? Like what?
Well, for example, in some states, you can't collect any interest at all.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah. So do your homework.
Okay, so it's important to charge within the legal limits. Are there any other pitfalls?
Yeah, absolutely. The podcast mentions a couple others, being too casual with the terms.
We kind of touched upon that. What do you mean?
You want to be specific.
Right.
So, for example, you say, oh, we'll work out a flexible repayment schedule, but you don't give concrete details.
Righty.
And then they miss a couple of payments or they stop communicating, and it just creates this tension where you can't bring it up because nothing was really solidified.
Okay. What else?
Another one, neglecting to discuss what happens if they can't pay the loan back.
Okay.
Life happens.
Yeah.
And you want to address this up front.
It feels like we're planning for failure, but I guess it's better to be prepared.
Exactly. It's not about expecting things to go wrong.
Okay.
But having that contingency plan in place.
Right.
So maybe you agree to extend the repayment period. Maybe you look at other forms of repayment if they run into some hard times.
So proactive communication is important.
Absolutely.
And facing those what-ifs head on.
Face those what-ifs.
Okay, I'm seeing the wisdom in that. So that's the core elements of the loan agreement. Are there any, optional extras we could add?
Yeah, you can consider things like collateral.
Okay.
Especially if it's for a significant amount.
Right.
So, a car, a piece of jewelry, a valuable collection, anything that could help secure the loan for you.
It's like an insurance policy for the lender.
It is.
Okay.
But again, got to be outlined in the agreement.
Of course. And signed and dated by both parties.
Huh. Always. A witness or a notary can add another layer of legality, but it's not always required.
Okay, so we've covered the loan agreement. Now, how do we protect the friendship? How do we talk about this without, like, making it weird or awkward?
That's a fantastic question. And that brings us to the heart of why this topic is so complex.
Right, because we want to help our friends.
We do.
But we also want to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Both financially and emotionally.
Emotionally especially.
So let's dive into those emotional dynamics.
Let's do it.
All right, so we know we need a loan agreement, but how do we deal with the emotions that come with lending money to friends?
What's the thing, right? Money and friends, it's a recipe for disaster sometimes.
Yeah, it's a minefield.
It really can be. So for lenders,
Okay.
you really have to go into this with a healthy dose of realism.
Okay.
And the podcast really stressed this point. Only lend what you can afford to lose.
But that seems a little counterintuitive, right?
Right.
If I'm lending money, shouldn't I expect to get it back?
You should, but going into it with the mindset that you might not can really help you manage your expectations.
Okay.
And prevent resentment down the line. Think of it as a gift with the possibility of repayment.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, just taking that emotional value away from the money itself.
Right.
And also recognizing that lending money won't magically solve their problems.
Right.
It's a temporary fix, and sometimes it can even make things worse.
Okay, so what about the borrower? What does the podcast say about them?
So for borrowers, the key is to treat this seriously.
Okay.
It's not a gift. It's not a handout. It's a financial obligation that you have to honor.
Right. It's so easy to think, oh, it's just from a friend. No big deal.
That's when things get messy.
Right.
So remember, this is a real financial transaction.
Yeah.
With consequences for both sides.
Okay, so how can a borrower be more responsible? How can they show that they respect the loan?
Well, be proactive. Talk about the repayment terms. Don't wait for the lender to bring it up. Show them that you are taking this seriously and you are committed to honoring this agreement.
So take ownership of it.
Absolutely. And keep those lines of communication open.
Okay.
Keep the lender updated. Let them know how things are going. And if you're having trouble paying them back, don't avoid the conversation.
Right. Don't ghost them.
Don't ghost them. That's a friendship killer.
It is.
Just be upfront about it. You know, maybe you can work out a payment plan or come up with a solution together.
Right. So it's not just about the money, but it's about that trust and keeping the friendship intact.
It is. It's about communication, setting boundaries, and holding each other accountable.
Okay, I'm seeing the wisdom in all of this, but what if lending money just isn't the right solution? The podcast mentioned some alternatives.
Right, because sometimes giving money isn't actually the most helpful thing.
Okay, so what are some of those alternative approaches?
Well, it really depends on the situation.
Right.
Maybe they're just bad at budgeting.
Okay.
You could offer to help them make a budget or find some financial counseling resources.
So giving them tools instead of just a Band-Aid.
Exactly. Empower them to figure this out on their own.
I like that.
What else?
Maybe they're facing a sudden hardship. You know, you could help them brainstorm ways to make some extra money.
Okay.
Maybe connect them with someone who's hiring.
So using your network to help.
Exactly. Sometimes it's not about money. It's about time and skills and connections.
Right. And sometimes a friend just needs someone to listen.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
Just a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, just to let them know that they're not alone.
That you're there for them. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of ways to support friends. But what if I'm not comfortable lending money? How do I tell them that without, like, ruining the friendship?
That's a tough one. It's all about honesty and communication, but you have to be delicate about it.
So how would you approach it?
Well, first I'd start by letting them know that you care about them and you want to help.
So come from a place of empathy.
Absolutely. And then you can gently explain that you're just not in a position to lend money right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to give them a reason.
Just be firm but compassionate and don't make excuses.
Right. And what if they keep pushing? What if they try to make me feel guilty about it?
You have to hold your ground.
It's hard to say no.
It is, but sometimes it's necessary.
And it's okay to say no to the loan, but not no to the friendship.
Exactly. Offer support in other ways, like helping them find resources or just being there for them emotionally.
So true friendship is about more than just money.
So much more.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, from the loan agreement to the emotional side of things to communication strategies.
I think so too.
I feel a lot more equipped to deal with these situations now.
Me too. And you know what? Let's switch gears for a moment.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about being the lender.
Right.
But what about being the borrower? What are the responsibilities that come with borrowing money from a friend?
Oh, that's a good point. We haven't really talked about that.
We haven't. So let's explore that side of things.
Okay, let's do it. That's a really good point. It makes you think about it from their perspective.
Yeah, and it highlights that empathy and understanding is so important because, we might feel disappointed or even hurt when a friend says no to a loan.
Yeah.
But they have their reasons, they have their own boundaries.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in like our own little world.
It is.
But we have to try to see it from their side.
Absolutely. And I think, being denied a loan from a friend can bring up all sorts of emotions. Disappointment, frustration, maybe even a little rejection.
It can definitely hurt the ego a little bit.
Yeah, because it feels like you're not a good enough friend or something.
Right.
But it's important to remember that their decision to not lend you money isn't a reflection on you.
Okay, but how do we separate those feelings of rejection from the reality of the situation?
Well, I think communication is always key.
Yeah.
If a friend says no to a loan, express your feelings, but do it respectfully.
Okay.
Let them know you're disappointed, but you respect their decision.
So like, hey, I understand you can't lend me the money right now, and I'm a little bummed, but I appreciate you being honest with me, and I respect your decision.
Exactly. Something like that.
Okay.
That shows maturity, and it shows that you value the friendship more than the money.
And it opens up the door for like a conversation.
It does.
To really understand where they're coming from.
Right, because maybe they're going through some financial stuff themselves, or maybe they've had a bad experience with lending money before.
Okay.
So there's always something deeper going on.
It's a good reminder that everyone has their own story,
They do.
their own experiences, and we need to respect that.
We do. All right, so we've talked about how to deal with being told no, but what if a friend agrees to lend you money and then starts acting weird?
Oh, yeah, that's happened to me.
It's happened to a lot of people, I think, and it comes down to like unsaid expectations and anxiety.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Yeah.
So again, communication is so important.
Okay.
From the very beginning.
So not just about the loan itself, but how we're going to communicate
Exactly.
throughout the process.
Yes, like having scheduled check-ins or updates even if things are going well.
Okay.
Just so that you're both on the same page.
Right, because if something feels off,
Address it.
it's better to just get it out there.
Absolutely. And also remember that the dynamic of the friendship might change a little bit.
Yeah, because now there's money involved.
There is, and there's kind of a power imbalance there. So as a lender, you have to be sensitive to that.
Okay.
Don't make them feel like they're indebted to you.
So no constant reminders about the loan?
No.
Okay, good.
And as a borrower, you have to own that responsibility.
Okay.
Make an effort to repay the loan as agreed.
Show them that you're taking it seriously.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about communication, respect, sensitivity. But what if things still go wrong?
Right. What if they just can't pay me back or the friendship just starts to fall apart?
That's a really tough situation, and there's no easy answer.
So no magic solution.
No, but I think in those cases, you have to prioritize the relationship over the money.
So even if it means like losing some money?
It might.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe you adjust the repayment terms, or even consider seeking outside help.
Like a mediator or something.
Exactly. Someone neutral who can help facilitate a conversation.
That's a really good idea. Sometimes you just need someone to help you see things more clearly.
You do. And remember, even if things don't work out perfectly, you've learned something about yourself, your friend, and the whole situation.
Okay, wow. This has been a huge deep dive.
It has.
And I feel like we've covered so much about lending and borrowing money between friends.
We have. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
There's always more to learn.
So much more. So for our listeners out there who are maybe going through this right now, I hope this has given you some tools and some things to think about.
I hope so too. And remember to be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Be compassionate to your friend.
Yeah.
And always try to protect that friendship.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of this and continue your own deep dive into friendship and finance. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep talking about this stuff.
Bye, everyone.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.